Hi, welcome to episode 3 of Turning Point. What makes some people want to give, and what makes some people want to just take? I was always wondered about that. Uh, Take Azim Premji, for example. He has a lot, but he also gives away a lot to charity and, honorable causes. There are people who are much richer than him who don't give much. So it's always foxed me, this whole sense of wanting to help people who are less privileged than us. Where does that motivation come from? Is it just egoism? Is it that I want to show people that, I have given? Is it that? Is it a sense of altruism? Or what is it? So, in this episode, I'm going to look at people who made the shift from profitable private sector companies to the social sector, which is non-profit. What drives people to move away from large global companies and then begin to start helping the needy? So my guest today is a good friend of mine, Bhawani Singh Shekhawat. We meet very often when I'm in London, at least for a cup of tea. And Bhavani is one of those people who had a very large and varied experience with large global companies like Nielsen, like Coca Cola, like Reckitt Benckiser. He was also a teacher in the Elphinstone College in Mumbai, which some of you might be surprised to know. And then some years ago, he took up this job with Akshaya Patra. And you must know this NGO. It's very well known for feeding children, underprivileged children, and they are looking after their educational needs. Bhavani heads Akshaya Patra he's headquartered in London and looks after Europe. And I've always been fascinated by his journey from going from the profitable private sector to a non-profit sector and working with Akshaya Patra, which he's completely absorbed in. In fact, we recently published a book called Here Today, Here Tomorrow, and we gave away the proceeds of that book to Akshaya Patra. And that is when Bhavani told me that £1 can feed one child for 1 month. So we priced that book at over $2. So meet Bhawani Singh Shekhawat, CEO for Europe of Akshaya Patra. Hi Bhavani, pleasure to have you on this show.
Hello, Prabs. Great to be on Turning Point. Thanks for having me here.
Bhavani, tell us a bit about your work at Akshaya Patra and this whole social sector, how it is driving you, how is it making you happy? What are the things that perhaps the sense of fulfillment which you didn't have in the private sector, which you are now getting in this social sector? Could you speak a little bit about that?
Chance conversation with an old friend led to us setting up a foundation called the Adhyayan Quality Education Foundation, which really is a foundation that aspires and works in a significant way in many parts of India to transform schools and curriculum and education. I have no domain knowledge in education, but I sort of jumped right in and started traveling and working with these schools and children. And one day when we were in Meghalaya, I believe, I met a few children who were actually traveling about 1.5 hours one way to go to school. And they were spending 4 hours traveling to school and perhaps 4 to 5 hours being in school. And they were exceptionally happy. And I said, look, what is it that you want out of a school? What truly creates this best impactful educational environment? And it struck me then in those wonderful hills of Meghalaya, that truly what transforms education is not necessarily the curriculum or ergonomic furniture or orange walls or cushioned seats or technology, etc. Even that's important, that's necessary, that's vital, but not sufficient. What truly creates an outstanding educational environment is not what you put into the mind of the student, but it begins with what you put into the body of the child. So I really understood there, sitting with those children, what they ate, how they enjoyed, studying, living, working. And when I looked at what they ate, I realized that the food they were eating had a far better nutritional profile than what our children ate. So clearly, there was something that was missing, and I simply carried that thought back on the plane back into Bangalore. And as I was navigating with my daily life, etc., I got a call from a very very close friend, and she said to me, Bhavani, there is an organization that might, it might be good for you to go in there. They have a leadership review, and you might want to sit in the meeting and really advise them. It's a huge word around some initiatives that they are planning. And that's the first time I walked into Akshaya Patra. And what I saw completely transformed me, completely blew me. Because here was an organization that was combining the best of technology, engineering, almost rocket science know-how to produce a plate of food. They use artificial intelligence, blockchain. I say they, it's we now, and really to create a plate of food, and that plate of food then transform the lives of millions of children. So at Akshaya Patra, we now serve close to 1.87, close to 2 million children in India, and a lot of homeless and underprivileged and children in London, where I live. So I said, this is absolutely fantastic. And I started engaging with them a lot more. And before I knew it, we were talking about me playing a leadership role in Akshaya Patra. So that was really the transition. And what I do today is a combination of that. And along the way came another organization called the Vedika Scholars Program for Women, an outstanding organization that is set up to transform the lives of women as professionals. It's perhaps definitely India's and perhaps one of the world's foremost liberal arts based MBA programs designed to improve professional outcomes for young women. And what they're doing is fascinating. And what we do at Vedika is a big part of my life and something that I strongly believe in and I'm very, very passionate about. So it's really all of these things that come together. I spent most of my time, almost all of my time with Akshaya Patra, and that is a lifetime's work. Because to create a structure, a system, a way of being for millions and millions of children in India, and equally a large number of children here in the United Kingdom, is something which is not only fascinating but hugely rewarding. And this is an opportunity. This combination of things is something that I'm eternally grateful for.
So, Bhavani, you know, there's been a lot of talk these days, recently, about brand purpose, and that, every brand needs a purpose. Positioning is no longer fashionable, neither is personality or anything else. Very similarly, doesn't every person need a purpose? And I'm sure that when you made this shift to the non-profit sector, it had something to do with your sense of purpose as a person. Do you mind talking a little bit about that?
One fine morning, I asked myself the question that, why am I doing this? A very fundamental, very, very basic question. And as good questions go, it really kept staring at you. Once you see that question, you can't unsee it. And I realized that most of my life was structured in a way to defer what I really, really wanted to do. So I kept saying, I like doing this, but I'll do this when I retire. Or I like doing this when I really have some spare time on my hands. Or I like doing this, but I'm not sure if right now is the time to do that. And the question really that made sense to me was, what would I do today if I was to never retire? To be doing things that take you close to your ikigai, I've always been fascinated by Eastern philosophy and the Western structures that will allow to execute on a philosophy. So I think the world is a fascinating place when truly the East and West meet in this particular manner. I think our philosophies are not necessarily collinear, but definitely complementary. So to me, the purpose of human life is really to be able to live the genius that we are born with and to then find an interface for it so that we can then produce our best work at the best time in the best possible manner to the best possible outcomes. And then, if you put in the kind of effort that we must put in, the outcomes then really take care of themselves. So, for me, it's really, really important that we live a life that is full of purpose, not for tomorrow, but for today. And if we live our life with purpose today, there is a good chance that tomorrow might be a day of purpose and a day of bliss and joy. So that becomes really, really important. And regardless of whether you are at home or work or play or anywhere in between, you could be seamless about it. So you could be purposive about all of this. And I think the more seamlessness we practice and we appreciate and we enjoy and we deliver, the less encumbered lives we will lead. So to me, that's really, really an important part of my life, an important part of the kind of things that keep me going, but equally an important part of what I really believe the world should be doing more of.
Bhavani, what would you tell people who are in the private sector and are perhaps not, well, they would like to do something in the social sector, but they're not quite sure about whether they should give up their profession in the private sector and what it might mean to jump into, working with an NGO.
Well, perhaps I'm neither capable nor knowledgeable to give any advice. It's not my place. But I'll say this, that there is a fundamental difference which is often overlooked between the for profit sector and the not for profit sector. And that difference fundamentally changes the way in which skills and attitudes work in either of these two sectors. So the for profit sector should be designed for perpetuity, for it to be relevant forever. So if you were a Nestle, Procter and Gamble, GE, Boeing, you'd like to remain relevant and profitably relevant forever. Whereas the not-for-profit sector and organizations like Akshaya Patra or many other organizations should be designed for obsolescence. The sooner we shut down, the sooner it'll imply that we've actually done our jobs. So when I say shut down, not because of any other reason, but because we have done what we set out to do. And that means that the kind of skills and attitudes and competencies and behaviors you bring into the not for profit sector are very, very different. So one has to be extremely grounded, one has to be extremely full of gratitude to be able to be even have the opportunity to serve the way we serve in the for-profit sector. It does require very, very important and clear domain skills. So you need to be ready with numbers. You have to have an eye on the future. You have to understand the kind of impact you want to create. You have to build the organization that allows you to be able to do the kind of things that you've set out to do. But the purpose is very, very different. And therefore, it's very, very important for leaders to understand these subtle differences and nuances. Because once you do that, it can become extremely rewarding. It can also become extremely challenging. But it could mean that you really sleep better.
Bhavani, thank you so much for being on Turning Point. What a great pleasure to meet you. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you, Prabs. Thanks for having me on Turning Point. It was an absolute pleasure.